Hello, hello. Welcome to the Scale My Shopify Store show. Kath Langman here, your host on the show today. Now, one of the hardest things when it comes to planning for growth is estimating your future revenue and setting goals around how much you'll grow month on month and year on year. And I guess as business owners and as leaders in an organization, we do crave predictable, profitable growth. We crave that so that we can have confidence about what we're doing, right? But most people who have been in business for even a short while know from experience that there are a lot of variables outside our control, which certainly makes it really difficult to plan ahead with confidence. And it also makes it extremely difficult for many entrepreneurs to spend money with confidence on things like advertising or on any other strategy that's designed to help generate that growth that you want. And what happens then is business owners proceed with a really high degree of caution and are super conservative with their investments, their marketing investments, not wanting to risk too much money until they have proof that their ads or their other activities are going to get them good results, and assuming that, they'll then be able to scale up in time to achieve their goals. And unfortunately, this really produces the results that they're after, which can then, kind of dent the business owner's level of confidence and their motivation to keep at it. I mean, for starters, they often don't go out with the right mix of channels required to get the best results. And the idea that you can master one channel at a time and then wait until you get amazing results on that before layering another channel into the mix, it's kind of a false assumption, because it's the combination of the channels that actually produces the superior results in terms of revenue and in terms of profitability. And secondly, spending too little doesn't give the platforms or algorithms enough budget to work with. Your ads never exit the learning phase and instead continue to produce really small, unprofitable returns, and then they just can't be scaled at all. So you'll never get enough traffic to reach sales goals when you run your ads like that. And there's also a commonly held misconception that you can never guarantee any kind of specific result when it comes to your digital marketing. And I hear and read this opinion all the time, often from media buyers who specialize in running ads on one platform. And in their case, it is true, because they don't have influence over most of the things that actually contribute to an e-commerce revenue result. They're not able to influence website conversion rate, for example, or influence other channels that support revenue and profits, whether it's other paid channels or email marketing or the promotional calendar or whatever else. However, as the business owner, or if you are working with a marketing specialist who does work across all of those platforms and channels to implement like a whole of business growth strategy, then there are ways that you can predict your revenue and growth, profit growth, with a high level of accuracy. And honestly, in 2024, with the state of our economy right now, I mean, net profit growth is actually probably far more important than top line revenue growth. So, if you don't master this, and in particular, as a marketer or in the marketing function of your business, if you don't master this, then you really will struggle a lot more. So today on the show, I'm going to be walking you through the revenue growth modeling method that I've developed that leads to much more accurate predictions and overall better results, both in terms of revenue and profits. Shall we dive in? All right, so the first thing that you need to bear in mind with this kind of model, or in reality, any other kind of model that you might use, is that all models are inherently wrong. I mean, whenever you're modeling, you are going to be using benchmark averages and a number of various assumptions within that model. So, for example, you might be making assumptions that things like conversion rate and average order value and customer retention, and even things like, peaks and troughs in your sales cycle and so on, will stay pretty much the same throughout the year. So, of course, that's going to mean that, the model will be inherently wrong, but at the end of the day, some models are useful. And a useful model is what you need when it comes to planning and, working on your projections in your business. So what makes a model useful? So since all models are wrong, we need to be really cognizant of what is importantly wrong. I heard the phrase, it is inappropriate to be concerned about mice when there are tigers around. So we need to we need a model that helps us to do two really critical things. Number one, it needs to represent a close approximation of your future reality. And so if we're not able to get within 10% of your target, then the model isn't very useful. And secondly, a useful model needs to quickly identify where you are importantly wrong so that you can course correct. So, what you need to understand and take from this is that being accurate with your growth projections is just as much about execution and implementation as it is about your modeling or your forecasting. I mean, the reality is revenue and profits don't just show up because you wrote a goal or you wrote it in a spreadsheet, you wrote a number in a spreadsheet. It shows up because you made it show up through implementing the right marketing strategies. We create that revenue, by executing against a plan that was connected to a specific outcome, that was connected to a specific inventory purchase, and that, was connected to your cash flow and to other operational elements of your business. And so to make this reality happen, we need to build an operating model for profit, which means the model doesn't just include, your sales goals. It actually looks at the entire business operations. And there are 4 stages to building this kind of model, and I'm really excited to share. I'm excited to share this overview with you today, but I'm also excited to share that this is something that we now do with all our clients whose goal is to grow more profitably this year and who really want to get our expert insight and input into that whole of business growth. And so the first stage in the model is to look at the numbers. And, you start looking at numbers month on month, year on year, and then channel by channel as well. And, that's probably the fun part, really looking at, I guess, the revenue history and, thinking ahead as to how much you want to grow, how much more revenue you want to make month on month, year on year, over the next year. But it's not sufficient to just look at the top line revenue numbers. So the next kind of layer of this is, what are the inputs or levers that really influence the outputs or results? And we talk about metrics in digital marketing. So what are the metrics that you really need to be looking at that are influencing the outputs in your business? So, is it traffic? Is it conversion rate, average order value, customer lifetime value, returning customer rate? I mean, there's multiple things, right? And then what is the relationship between those metrics as well? So, you'll find that there are a number of inputs that will produce an increase in conversion rate. There'll be a number of inputs that might improve or extend the customer lifetime value, or that might increase the average order value, and so on and so forth, right? So what is the relationship between these metrics? Next, we really want to look at what is the contribution from each channel. And this is really, really important because, in e-commerce, and I've spoken about this on the show before, there's a variety of different marketing channels that you might be using in your business. So it could be, social media platforms like Meta, Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, could be Google. Then you're going to have, organic. You're going to have email marketing potentially. You'll have a variety of other different channels. And on the show before, I've certainly spoken about the necessity to have 3 different kinds of channel traffic in your business. So owned, earned, and paid. And so we need to make sure that we have a really good mix of those 3, and within each of those 3 different types of traffic, that we have more than one channel, so that we are diversifying our risk essentially, and making sure that we put ourselves in the best position to have the the future results that we're looking for, because ultimately we're all using channels and platforms that we have no control over. None of us operating these, our online stores, we don't own Facebook or Instagram. We don't, so basically we're at the mercy of whatever these platform owners do on those platforms. So we definitely want to have more than one channel within each type of traffic. And we want to understand, what is the contribution from each so that we ultimately have the best chance of being profitable. I mean, if we were getting 100% of our traffic to our website from a paid channel, then we really aren't going to be profitable, right? Next, you want to be really reviewing your business metrics. So sales, revenue, ad spend, your marketing efficiency ratio. So, essentially how much of your, what is the ratio between your total ad spend, no matter, across all channels, and your revenue. So that's your marketing efficiency ratio. And you want to keep that within whatever the profitable range is for your business model. And then average order values, there is that next business metric. And then your customer level metrics as well. So this is often neglected by my marketers and business owners, but can be super influential to both revenue growth and profitable growth. So what's the lifetime value of your customers? What is the cost per customer acquisition? So how much do you spend on marketing and advertising in order to win a new customer for the first time? What is your first order profitability? And so this has to be different depending on what your business model is. Do you have a single product business that people only ever need to buy once, or do you have a business, for example, skincare, where there's a latency built in and a repeat purchase rate that is likely to happen every few months, right? And so that the requirement for first order profitability is going to be a little bit different for those different business models. And then how many orders will you be getting in any given period of time? I mean, at the end of the day, that's probably a number you're going to need as a business owner, because you have to have enough product in order to sell. And then from there, the next lot of numbers that you want to dive into is your channel metrics. And this will be, again, it'll be different depending on what channels you're advertising on from paid. So for those, obviously, you're going to be looking at, everything from click-through rate to add to cart to conversion rate, cost per purchase, average order value, return on ad spend, and there will be various other in-channel metrics that you will look at as well. But other channels as well, you'll be looking at, hopefully you'll be looking at Klaviyo and really looking at the metrics in there, and any other platform that you're using in your marketing and advertising as well, and really just making sure that you are across all of those metrics. Now, regarding your customer metrics, you do want to be maintaining a healthy balance between new and repeat customers. And so I don't know whether you've heard about the phenomenon of the shrinking sponge. But essentially what this means is that, some businesses, and you may recognize this in your own business, perhaps, they will rely for too long on trying to grow their revenue purely from their existing customer base. And so they're trying to produce that revenue growth from an existing pool of customers without, spending more on ads to acquire new customers. And this can be, certainly whenever I see people who are really relying very heavily on warm audiences, on social media, for example, and their email database, and they're rolling out a lot of promotions and discounts and incentives and things like that, that is, the the epitome of a business that is squeezing that sponge, or the sponge that is shrinking because they're squeezing it so much. The analogy is probably getting tired now. But hopefully you know what I mean. And the risk for this is, sure, it's going to prop up your profits now, and it's probably going to make your business look really good right now, but you are going to give yourself a future problem that's going to be hard to overcome, because over time, when you do this, where you're constantly just going out to your existing customer base, you burn out those customers and they stop coming back. And I mean, even if you aren't running discounts, if you're always selling to the same customer base, eventually that customer lifetime comes to an end and they don't need or want to shop from you anymore. And so, we have this tailing off of the customer base. And, if you are constantly discounting, of course, that's going to erode profits as well. So we do need to always be investing in new customer acquisition if you want to keep growing. And I want to give you a little bit of an example here of something that happened with one of our clients last year. So they were a business in the beauty industry, and they were really growing. They were growing pretty fast, and they were already at a reasonable size. They had a team, and they took on a financial advisor, which, it's probably, if you don't have somebody helping you with that side of things, then that's probably something that you'll need at a certain point of growth. However, it was this person that in this role in the business that decided to set both the sales targets and the ad spend budgets without having any discussion with us, and we were on board as the growth strategists and, the people who were executing on the marketing and advertising plans. And so there was no conversation with us, and there was absolutely no correlation or reality between the output that this financial controller was expecting from the spend and the inputs. So, we do need to make sure that we, as marketers and advertisers, are having these discussions with, the business owner and the operational side of the business, and vice versa as well, so that, at the end of the day, that the plans and the strategies and the platform results are actually, within a realistic range. All right, so let's move on to stage 2 in the modeling. And this is about your promotional planning and, finding ways to increase or invent or create demand, in particular in the non-peak sales times. So most e-commerce businesses are typically going to have a pretty big fourth quarter, because that's when just when you look across the board at e-commerce businesses internationally, that's generally the case. But, there's Black Friday, there's Christmas and holiday season related stuff. And so, it's a typical gifting period of time, as well as, the stimulation of sales from events like Black Friday. So that's often a big, busy time of year. Other businesses are going to have other regular peak sales times of the year. So, for example, one of our clients at the moment has, kid products that are, really lends itself to back to school type promotions. And so they, obviously here in Australia, our school year starts at the end of January or the start of February. And so, she has an absolute cracker of a January in terms of her sales every year. So first, obviously you want to figure out when your regular and expected peak sales times are, plot that out in your marketing calendar. And then looking at the other times of the year, which, they're not going to have that inherent demand baked in just because of, those periods of time when people are usually out buying, so if that kind of inherent demand isn't there, then we need to, create it, basically. And so how do you do that? I mean, at the end of the day, it's not like you can necessarily expect to meet, for example, a Black Friday result every day of the year. I think that would be a little bit unrealistic for most e-commerce businesses. However, there definitely will be times of the year where you can run something like a product launch. You might want to either introduce a new product to your range that is going to be a little bit more desirable and relevant to that period of time in the year. So, for example, if you're a seasonal business and you sell winter products, then, how can you introduce something that's going to go crazy in summer, or vice versa? So introducing new products to your existing customer base is one way to stimulate that demand and to create more demand for your range. Also doing a product launch type promotion to new customers. So this would be, making a bit of a big concerted effort and a big song and dance about your existing products, but really going out hard to new audiences. And I love doing those sorts of promotions where you can try and again, just find ways that you can make the messaging and the content really relevant to that time of year, but you can go out to, a potential audience in a variety of different ways, maybe have like a really coordinated campaign that you work with various influencers or a PR push, as well as, of course, advertising, list building, maybe a new photo shoot that has, a different way of showcasing your brand and your range and really inspiring your ideal customer base who've never bought from you before to come and give you a go. So product launches is another way to do it. And then, just even like smaller themed promotions and marketing messages that go out through your various channels. And again, just making sure that you're really trying to find ways to make it really relevant and appealing for whatever time of year it is. One of our clients, for example, sells a product that is used both when traveling with your baby as well as when you're out and about walking your baby in a pram or a stroller. And you can imagine that there are times of the year when those various messages will be more relevant and less relevant. For example, when it's freezing cold in the middle of winter, not so many people really are keen to get out and about and walk their baby outside. So, really thinking about those seasonal campaigns and, what can you do throughout the year to help stimulate and create that demand in the low sales seasons in your year. And then plot those out in your calendar. Now, the next stage actually, just let me back up. I just wanted to make one more comment about this. And this is something that I certainly have learned the hard way over the years, is when you are, in step one, obviously we're doing that review of all of the numbers and metrics. And if you look at revenue historically, it's really important to not make the mistake that the same pattern of revenue month on month is going to happen no matter what. Whatever happened over the last year, the conditions are probably going to be different in the year to come. So you can't make that assumption anyway. But also, you must look at those historic sales results in tandem with the marketing that went on at the time, and realize that a lot of those results were essentially made to happen because of the marketing that was rolled out. So again, this is where potentially leaving sales forecasting up to the financial planner is a little bit risky, because they don't typically have any knowledge about what happens in the marketing department. And and so definitely you don't want to make that mistake of just assuming that whatever happened last year, if you just keep doing the same thing, that the same output will happen this year. So really understanding that the marketing function of the business is about essentially creating that demand that results into the sales revenue. Stage 3 of this modeling is about calculating how much should we spend? What is the budget that we should have for advertising and marketing in order to grow the business, and in particular, in order to acquire new customers? Certainly, I get asked a lot, how much do I have to spend? Right? I think a lot of business owners, they want to not spend any money. They want to spend as little as possible. I think, what would be a really good way to flip that script is, how much can I spend? I want to spend as much as possible. But of course, I don't mean by that we should spend too much for things, right? Like, we want to spend as much as possible, but by getting, in making sure that we still get the output that we want. We want to have the same kind of level of profitability at a higher spend. And anyway, calculating your ad budgets, it's going to come down to your target customer acquisition cost and the profit margin that you need after your ad spend, and to to be able to calculate this, you need to know how much your customer lifetime value is over 12 months. And so if you know that, you're going to be better able to calculate how much you can afford to spend on acquiring the customer in the first place. So by customer acquisition cost, I just essentially mean how much are you spending in ads. Also consider how much you're spending in discounts to convert the first order from a customer. Now, something that can be helpful, and I'm certainly more familiar with the Shopify platform than other platforms, so presumably you can get the same information from other platforms as well. But the customer cohort analysis in Shopify is really, really helpful here. It's going to tell you how much customers spend in a year based on their monthly cohort. So, for example, which month did they first purchase from you, and over the course of a year, how much have they spent? It's also going to give you an indication of how much a customer spends depending on whether they purchased, you should be able to know, like, did we do Black Friday, or did that month did we do a product launch, or, what was the marketing happening in that month? And, what was the average order value and the total spend for customers that purchased in that cohort, right? In that monthly cohort. And knowing those numbers can make it really helpful, or knowing those results rather, or the difference in the spend result between cohorts of different months, it's going to make it really helpful for you when it comes to planning out your marketing calendar. An example of this would be one of our clients at the moment, they have quite a high average order value anyway. But we definitely have noticed that in January, even though obviously the total revenue is down on Black Friday, Christmas period, which is to be expected, especially with this product because it is a gift product, but January, their average order value has been higher. And in fact, there has been a specific campaign that we ran that actually produced a significantly higher spend per customer. And, knowing that information now makes it a lot easier for us to, buckle down on what's working really, really well and getting the results. I've actually noticed as well in Shopify Plus, and I know a lot of people aren't on Shopify Plus, but for those of you who are, what's really cool now in the cohort analysis is that it also gives you the predictive spend per cohort. So that's a really super cool way to give you a little bit, even more confidence that you will have that future revenue predicted to come in. In fact, if you've got enough customers and you're using Klaviyo, you can actually pull up some predictive revenue data in there as well. So that's another way to kind of look at the information. But then the next thing, and this is going to be different between different brands and different businesses, but you need to think about the difference in ad spend that you can afford between a one-time purchase brand versus a brand where people are likely to buy multiple times. Now, this is certainly something that I'll notice in the repeat purchase type brands that I work with, where I can look at the cohort analysis and, maybe their first average order value is $75, but in the cohort analysis, you can see their total spend over a year is maybe double that, right? Or maybe 150%. So whereas another client of ours has only one product and people only buy it once. And so clearly there's, a finite amount that we can spend to remain profitable for that sort of a business model. So at this point, you should have a reasonably useful model, and it's going to include, the metrics that you need to hit to achieve your revenue targets. We would have the promotional calendar in place to stimulate brand discovery and consumer demand. We know what part of the business model these marketing activities will influence. Will they lift new customer acquisition? Are they going to lift returning customer rate? Are they going to influence your customer lifetime value? And then, we've calculated your ad spend budgets and the target return on ad spend for acquiring new customers. And all of this is going to give you a really solid picture of what your future is going to look like in your business. And you can then document your plan in a format that includes your promotional calendar activities, your channel specific plans. So what content you're going to share via Meta ads, Google ads, Klaviyo, etc. Includes your ad spend budgets with your expected return on ad spend and your anticipated marketing efficiency ratio, which is that's the ratio of your total ad spend to total revenue. And then, it can also or should also incorporate your 12-month profit and loss forecast. And building the P&L forecast into your projections is an absolute game changer when it comes to having visibility over the impact of your marketing and advertising efforts that they're going to have on your overall profitability. Which is pretty helpful at instilling more confidence that you are doing the right things. I would say probably most accountants or certainly not bookkeepers, but like over the years, and I've been in business for a really long time now, but I haven't really come across an accountant who is going to be giving you those predictive P&Ls. This is something you're probably going to have to learn how to do yourself, right? But being able to build that in and bake that in with your marketing and advertising plans and calculations is incredibly powerful. But as we mentioned at the beginning of this episode, all models are inherently wrong. But a useful model will tell you the most important areas where you are wrong. So achieving a result within 10% of your prediction it's going to come down to execution. And this is where stage 4 comes in. So to kind of illustrate stage 4, I want to tell you a story. You may have heard me tell this one before, but essentially, imagine that you are planning to drive from one side of the country to the other. If you're in Australia, imagine you're driving from, for example, Sydney to Perth, east side to the west coast. And when you are going to set out on a long road trip like that, you probably need to have a sat nav or a map or something that's going to make sure that you are going in the right direction. You probably want to figure out how long it's going to take you to get there. You're going to map out your route and make sure that you know what roads that you're going to drive on and where you're going to stay along the way and all of that kind of stuff. And then when you're on the way, you're probably going to need to make sure that you're checking your speedometer so that you're not going to be lumped with massive speeding fines for going too fast. You probably need to check that you are, heading in the right direction and you're not taking some kind of detour off the beaten track. You're going to be checking your fuel as well. You're going to be constantly checking these dashboard dials in your car to make sure that you are heading in the right direction at the right speed and without running out of fuel, right? And so it's the same in business. We need to plan, then we implement, we measure frequently, we pivot. Like if our steering wheel is kind of drifting off to one side, then we pull it back, right? So pivot, and then making sure that we are constantly keeping within close range of those target metrics. So, on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis, you want to ask yourself, what is the data showing me? So what does that mean? And now what are we going to do about it? And I think, probably most people can set growth goals for their business. They can set those revenue targets. Many people can also calculate things like how much traffic you need to get to your store, what average order value and conversion rate you need to hit those targets and that sort of thing. Some can design a marketing calendar that includes the right product launches and promotions that you're going to need to run to stimulate the demand for your products and to make sure that there's the brand discovery amongst your target audience that will be required to hit those targets. A few can design a media plan that works out specific ad campaign strategies and budgets that you're going to need to get enough traffic to your online store, and then to have the skill set to implement those campaigns in a way that achieves the required return on ad spend to achieve your targets. I'd say only a handful know how to track and interpret the data to course correct in a timely manner, and to ensure that the bus is always heading in the right direction at the right pace and profitability. That's a skill that takes experience. And when you can, I guess it's the kind of skill and experience that you can either get the hard way by trial and error over time, or you can significantly shorten that learning curve and get the results a lot faster by working with someone who already has those skills and experience. And if that's something that you would like to do, then I might be the right person to help you along with my team. So if you would like to explore what that might look like, then I would love to invite you to book in for a free strategy session. Absolutely no obligation to go ahead with us just by booking in that session. So you can do that by heading to productpreneurmarketing.com/let's-talk. And we will, of course, include the link to that on this episode show notes page. That's all I have for you today. It's been a bit of a deep dive. Hopefully you're still with me and that it all made sense for you. Hopefully you really enjoyed that and found that a little bit inspiring and motivating. But that's what I have for you today on the show, and I look forward to being with you again next week. Bye for now.